Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Riv Readers Podcast, hosted by Regina Library at Riviera University. I'm Katie McFarlane, your research and instruction librarian. I hope your spring semester is going well. Today, we are privileged to speak with one of our longtime library supporters, Dr. Martin Menke. Thank you very much for joining us today. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role here on campus?
Sure. So I'm Martin Menke. I'm the historian on campus. This is year 28. And I've taught a wide range of courses. Now we're mostly serving the core global scholars in JYS, all of which are still great courses to teach. And I love teaching students who will never have another history course because it's our one chance to get them interested and to sort of share why we love what we do in our department. So that's what I do. I just came back from a weekend with our students at the Model UN conference in Boston.
Yes.
3,000 college-age people pretending to be the UN. Very stimulating. Our students always learn a great deal, and they did a great job this year.
I know several of our library student workers were chatting about it last week, and they were looking forward to it.
Good.
And they were on different countries, right?
And actually different countries this time. So they were split up between Uzbekistan, Greece, and Belgium.
Wow.
Quite a spread.
Yeah.
And they talked about, they were represented in a disarmament committee, a World Health Organization, a UNESCO, which of course would be of interest to librarians.
Yes.
And a couple of other smaller committees.
Oh, how cool. How many students are on the Model UN? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a great thing. It's one of the few extracurricular academic activities.
That's true, yeah. What first sparked your interest in history?
Yeah. So I grew up in Berlin, Germany, and you kind of have history all over the place from various periods. I also, my own family history lends itself to that. So my father was American, came to Germany with a master's in German Lit and never went back. My mother's German, grew up all over the place. They moved a lot. And I had relatives on the wrong side of the wall in East Germany, so their story was interesting. My grandmother was from an estate in East Prussia that is now part of Russia. My mother's born in Breslau, which is now Wrocław in Poland. They were bombed out once in Berlin and then survived the great bombing of Dresden, after which they fled. So I have one grandfather who ended the war as chief of staff of the German Eighth Army, and the other one shoveled snow on the Buffalo-Albany line.
Wow.
So that sort of, I think, got me hooked.
Absolutely. Do you think there's any misconceptions that people have about studying history?
Yes, I think many of our students come to us from high school with a great horror of dates and facts. And I'm always telling them that's not history, that's chronology. We're really interested in explaining what the story means. What are the greater significances? How do things come together? So we spend a lot of time talking about causation. You know, the French Revolution did not break out because of a large hailstorm in the Paris Basin on the 13th of July, 1788. A lot of other things that came together. And weighing causes, I think, is important for students to learn too, which ones were more influential than others. I think that's the biggest misconception. It's not all battles. We actually do fairly little in the way of battles. We do a lot of social and an awful lot of cultural history, which I think is important. So we learn art styles, music styles, how power and sentiments of a time are expressed in the arts, visual and music. So I think those are also ways for them to become more aware of history around them.
That's very cool. And then I know that ties into other classes like the humanities courses, and also taking that context and the more of the day-to-day life.
Absolutely. I just want them to question why things are the way they are in a location.
That critical thinking.
Yes.
What courses are you teaching this semester?
It's a bit of an odd lot. I'm teaching environmental history for the first time. I am teaching freshman writing based on the notion of resistance to evil. So we're looking at Bonhoeffer, Gandhi, and Mandela. And then I'm teaching a new JYS called History and Politics of Genocide. All light and easy topics.
Right. Are there any topics that you're particularly looking forward to exploring?
Yeah, so I really do a lot with Bonhoeffer. We also look at a very simple woman who lived in the Netherlands, Corrie ten Boom, who hid Jews in her own home and ended up survived concentration camp, and then wrote about her experiences. And it's sort of, why would a simple person feel compelled to resist evil when it could cost her her life. In fact, it cost most of her family her life. So that's a great topic. On the genocide course, I think the idea of what motivates people to do that, why don't we stop them more quickly? I think to me those are interesting questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So pivoting back to congratulations on the new book.
Thank you.
Can you give us an overview of what it's about?
Sure. So I have an essay, a chapter in an edited volume on the Weimar Republic, so the period 1919 to 1933. I talk about one of the political parties that I've been studying for 30 years. It's called the Center Party. It's a party of Catholics across all social levels, classes, and regions. It's people who come together not because they want to necessarily defend Catholic interests, but they want to bring Catholic values to bear on national and international politics. And my larger theme is that very often in the Weimar Republic, other parties are not flexible or willing to compromise. So the far right and the far left, which means that the few parties that are in the middle have to work much harder to compromise, which is difficult when you've got, these Catholic politicians who have to now work with socialists and capitalists and others. In fact, they compromise themselves too far sometimes. They are the ones who usually try to prevent governments from falling in a parliamentary system. So their biggest fear is suffering of people, of the people. So they're willing, for example, they're willing to accept the Treaty of Versailles, which they all hate because the alternative would be more chaos and war. And they do this over and over again in the Weimar Republic. Disastrously, they do it once too often in 1933 when they think that the consequence of rejecting Nazi power would be a civil war between communists and Nazis. And they decide that Nazis are just slightly less evil than communists. And they make a crucially bad voting decision in parliament. And that's the Nazis grab power.
Wow.
So it's really interesting. It's a values-driven party, but that's also very pragmatic, serving a higher goal of very fallible individuals who ultimately make a very bad decision.
Now, how does that work with there's multiple parties? Because we have the two-party system.
There were a lot of parties in the parliamentary system in Germany, and many of them were very small, but they still had weight because you would need to cobble together coalitions of parties, groups of parties, to form a government and to pass legislation. And the problem is that by the early 30s, more than half the population is voting for political parties that are anti-Republican and anti-democratic.
Wow.
The communists, the Nazis, the German nationalists. And so that means that you've got really, the people have given up on democracy, right? Now, all of a sudden, other values are more important to them. And that's the tipping point for a democracy. So democracy collapses over a budget in March of 30. The parliamentary republic collapses, and then you have a benevolent dictatorship for 2.5 more years, followed by the Nazis.
Okay.
But really the idea is that democracies need defenders. They need people willing to stand up. They need people willing to stand on good principle while also being realistic. So when I teach these days, students are giving me a beady look about, what are you really talking about, then or now?
I was going to say there's probably some parallels.
A lot of parallels.
So I guess one of my questions is, what do you hope readers will take away from your chapter?
Well, I think the idea is that my chapter's on the later 20s, and Germany was fairly stable. And what's interesting is that my group, they need the pressure of crisis to keep them from disintegrating. So it's like a ball that's held together with pressure, and if there isn't the pressure, then the ball falls apart into its various pieces, because internally in the party, there are different political and economic interests.
Okay.
And some people are very pro-Republican, others are skeptical. There's big business and farmers and labor. Really, all they share is their common Catholic identity and their Catholic values. And when there's no crisis to force them to focus on those, they start splintering. Then they come back together when the crisis comes back, but they're weaker.
Interesting. Wow. So pivoting to books and reading, since it's our library podcast, I'm sure you do a lot of reading for work, but what do you do for reading for yourself or personal reading?
So I try to read what I would consider classical literature at least once a year. I try to read a Shakespeare play once, and I'm catching up on a lot of early 20th century German lit
Okay.
that I never read in school. I also, I mean, for just fun and relaxation at the end of the semester, I like spy novels and mysteries and
Nice.
things like that. I'm a great fan of the late John le Carré.
Oh, yes.
I always wish I could be George Smiley. So I think those are the kinds of things that I read. I read some theology
Hmm.
to continue my own education.
Very
Those
cool.
kinds of
So which Shakespeare are you working on now or this year?
Macbeth.
Oh, nice. So have you read through everyone?
No, I haven't. I
Okay.
haven't. No, I'm still working. There are a good number
There
of plays,
are,
and
yeah.
some of them I have to read 2 or 3 times. If you, it's not that the language is so hard. It's just the ideas, and you realize the depth.
Hmm.
The other thing is that historians lose the ability really to love the language. We're constantly trying to read quickly
Sure.
to take in as much information as possible. So we'll always have skimming. And then when you get to good literature, you have to actually make yourself enjoy the
Right.
language.
Like flip on a different side
Mhm,
of your brain.
mhm.
Do you read Shakespearean plays that have like footnotes or annotations or
I
anything like
do.
that? Yeah,
I
for
do.
that
I find that
context.
really helpful for commentary. And I wouldn't use SparkNotes or anything, but I do use, yes, I like to have when words are used differently.
Hmm.
Even in my own work, the German of the 1920s and the French and Italian are so different from that of today that you have to be careful how you use language.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Well, I mean, imagine reading the world through Gatsby and Hemingway. It takes a very different skill set.
Language evolves, and
Mhm,
so do we. No, you mentioned like some classic German
mhm.
literature. Are there any titles that we would
Yeah,
know?
he's slightly controversial, but there's a man who wrote a lot about working class experience called
Hmm.
Hans Fallada. Gerhart Hauptmann, who survived the war, wrote a lot about the social and cultural consequences of urbanization and industrialization. There's a great work called Berlin Alexanderplatz, Berlin Alexander Square, which is sort of about the dark, gritty, and dirty parts of life in a poor time when people
Okay.
are poor, and the fate of individual broken characters. I like that a lot.
Oh, very cool. Now you mentioned, so you grew up in Berlin. How old were you when you?
I went to a bilingual school.
Okay.
And then I came here for college at 19
Okay.
and been here ever since. I
Wow.
went to undergrad at Tufts, and then did my grad work at BC. I got married a month before I started here.
Oh,
So I've been here ever since.
wow.
Yeah.
That's very cool. And did you speak German and English in the home growing up?
So when I was a child, the predominant thinking was that you learn one language first and then the other. So I learned
Oh,
German first, and then when I was 3, my parents sent me to an American nursery school where nobody spoke German.
wow.
And so that was total immersion, which works really well with young kids. Today, the predominant theory is that you associate language with a person. So one
Okay.
parent speaks one and one the other.
Yeah, because otherwise I feel like the
Mhm,
kid would just be like
mhm,
throwing out both of
mhm.
them all the time, and that's very cool. I don't get to talk to many like multilingual
Yeah.
people, so
Although we have a fair number on campus, I'm always amazed by how many people speak other languages, both faculty, staff, and students.
absolutely. Yeah. So do you have a current read or something that you recently finished and really enjoyed?
What did I read recently? I've been reading some British fun fiction, sort of like the TV series Foyle's War.
Oh yeah.
So British police during the Second World War and its complications. I find
Hmm.
that fascinating. I've also read some recent German novels about the immediate post-war era and the moral
Oh.
ambiguities.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I'm
So
interested in.
definitely still like historical
Yeah,
fiction. Yeah.
yes.
Can't get away from it.
No.
Are there any books that you find yourself returning to over the years?
Yeah, I mean, some of the Shakespeare plays I've read and reread. There are some really well-written classic biographies that I've gone back to,
Mm,
or other seminal works.
hmm.
Otherwise, I spend most of my time, frankly, these days reading journal articles to keep up
I'm sure.
and reading works that I need for my own field and my own studies. So that takes up a lot of time.
Who are some of those biographies about?
So there's some new and a variety of new and very good Hitler biographies. Ian Kershaw, Thomas Ulrich, those are good. There were 2 fairly recent good books about the crisis of 1923
Okay.
in Germany. That's hyperinflation, that's the Hitler Putsch, there's a communist uprising, French-Belgian occupation. And just seeing some new interpretations of that has been really helpful to my own thinking.
Mm.
But I also go back, there's Bruce Lincoln, I think is his name, W. Bruce Lincoln, who has written great biographies of Khrushchev and Gorbachev. They're
Okay.
very good.
I'm sure, like, yeah, getting into the psyche of those figures
Yeah.
and how they were thinking, what they
Well,
were
we can't
thinking.
put dead people on a couch.
Right.
So we have to do the best we can with what we have.
And are they finding like new documents and evidence or just sort of reinterpreting?
I think with Gorbachev, Russian archives were very open in the 1990s, but they've closed again to foreigners. So we're back to where we were during the Cold War in terms of accessing Russian documents.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy to think about. Well, I just have one question
Okay.
left. If you could recommend one book, history or otherwise, to our listeners, what would it be and why?
There's a great book called In Defense of History by R.J. Evans. He's a great German historian. He also has a trilogy, a 3-volume history of the Nazi era that is very good. In Defense of History takes on postmodernism. It takes on the notion of fact fetish. It's really a defense of the significance and importance of history and historical methodology. So I like that a great deal.
That's great. Well, that's all I had. Was there
Great.
anything
No,
else?
thank you. This was a great opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I really
Very welcome.
appreciate it. If you'd like to follow us on social media, we are at Regina Library on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. You can always reach us through our website as well, rivier.edu/library. It's been great having you here, and we'll see you again soon.